Hi there. I want to appreciate each and every one that has been an active part of this journey so far and that has contributed in one way or the other. I want to appreciate every subscriber and everyone that has left a comment, and made every effort to see that these conversations reach as many people as possible. I know that we have really enjoyed our speakers and the perspectives that they brought, and it's really been an interesting journey. Do well to let us know areas of improvement. We'll continue to get better and better as we go. Thank you so much for being with us on this journey. See you on the next one.
The good person in politics is not always going to get things. It's not going to get us what we want. For instance, if I run for office now, I know one of my younger brother that will not vote for me because he believes that I will not steal for him to enjoy it. He believes that, look, if he enter there, we no go see change. So I'm sure he will. If this man is promising him money, contract at inflated cost, he will prefer by every standard to pick him rather than me. And that is where we are today. I know places where in the last election, despite all that Buhari did to stop the use of money to influence the election, money flew around and determined the outcome. And that is because a lot of us Nigerians suffer from recency bias. A recency bias is a kind of bias that make you base your decision on recent events. You might be suffering the way we are suffering now. Somebody might step into this Angwa Sunday and give everybody 5,000. And you go to the poll and that person will sweep the poll, not minding the suffering of 3 years, 4 years, 7 years ago. You forget it in that instance. And that is why the politicians have understood this. They will gather the money and keep it. On the election day, they can come and bribe you. You will forget the problem of the past 3 years. And that is because of our mindset.
So, sir, does that mean there's no hope?
There is hope, of course. There is hope as long as you and I hold this principle. In 2011, I was in Jos and we were voting. That was the first election, the election that had good luck and had Buhari and had Yakowa in Kaduna. In the place where I voted in Jos North. It was crowded. There were people, in fact, majority of people that came out to vote then wanted to vote for Jonathan. And there was somebody that wanted to vote for Buhari. That young man was in the minority, but he stood his ground right there to ensure that only votes that are cast is reflected in the outcome in the end. It was just one man, and there were not many voters, but he made sure that he stood his ground for the process to be followed. So when we go out to vote, when we go out to do things, what do we stand for? What do we stand for? Do we just let things slide? You cannot rig election where people have decided that there will be free and fair election. So let's not be passive, let's be active. Right there where you are, you may not win everywhere, but right there where you are, what did you achieve? What did you stand for? So we should never think of giving up. As for the candidates you mentioned, for some of us who already know what we want out of this country, we already know who to vote, no matter what happens. But the question is, will the process guarantee that those who were voted come out? It's not about party anymore. It's about individuals. Right all across the countries, in all the political parties, you have criminals, you have saints. Who are you choosing and what are the basis for your decision making? It is better you err on the right side than knowingly giving power to people that have proven themselves to be abysmal.
I'm going to make a comment to that, and then Basil will add up to it. And I want to make the first comment because I just finished talking about, again, Luther and Calvin, right? They speak heavily about work and vocation. And this is Luther's philosophy. That whatever your hand finds to do, which is a biblical injunction, do as unto the Lord. And what he's saying is this, that you should not consider that doing something for the Lord is when you stand on the pulpit to preach or go to the mission field. He says if you're a janitor, if you're a teacher, if you're a policeman, serve in your duty post as a priesthood. Consider your job in the classroom as a teacher as priesthood. And this is not just for the young person, this is for everybody. As a father, you must consider fatherhood as a priesthood. As a husband, you must consider husbandhood as a priesthood. As a son, you must consider sonship as a priesthood. Whatever you're doing. Now let me tell you the implications of that. A teacher that looks at teaching as priesthood is going to ensure, and when I mean priesthood, it means that they consider that they are serving God and then others. Let me put it in a caption in this way. For one, before many. In other words, you are living for one person. You are serving you're living for one person, God, before many people, in front of many people. That means the teacher prepares the lecture notes with all diligence as though they are serving God. But that also means that they deliver the lecture notes as though they are serving God. But you know that also affects when they go to work. They won't go to work late. They won't collect pay where they've not worked. That changes everything. The policeman will not collect bribe. The policeman will not be unjust because he's serving unto God. What does that mean for the husband? The husband will treat his wife as unto God. The father will raise his children as unto God. That means we'll have less people having baby mamas and cheating and side chicks. You see how just that view changes a whole lot of things. The guys working in Kaduna Electric, they won't charge you for lights that they didn't give you. You see that? You also, as a citizen, you won't go and steal light, bypass. Why? Because even if Kaduna Electric cannot come there before God, the guy at the fuel station, you're not changing the figures, you're not tampering the meter. Nobody might see, God sees. So you see how that changes everything for us. Let me make one quick remark and then Basim comes in. I remember a story of a guy that, I don't know whether it's a story or just a reference you're making, that he was walking and he looked to the left, looked to the right, and looked in front of him, looked behind him, didn't see anybody, and then he threw the banana peel that he had eaten. And somebody asked him, he said, I saw that you looked to the left, to the right, front, back. I just noticed that you didn't look up. Maybe if you looked up and saw that God was seeing you, you wouldn't throw that thing on the floor. Will that change how we approach things like pornography and all the ethical issues? Will that change how we look at abortion? Will that change how we look at immorality? I don't know if you get what I'm saying. So when we live as unto one, living for one, before many, that changes everything. I think that is what we should do. Not just as young people. For the old man, you provide mentorship to the young people, to God, living to God before people. So those are my thoughts. That's it.
I'll speak from my personal experience. First, when I joined my company, or when I got into this industry, like every other thing I've always done, I had it in mind that when you meet me on my job, your stereotype of my field, my sector will change. That is a core principle that I've always operated with. You look at things. people that come to you where you are, how do you deal as an individual? How do you deal in your place of work? Do you deliver quality service, or do you deliver just any kind of service? You see, our government cannot be better than us. That is the truth. Our government cannot be better than us. Instead, it will reflect us, just as he said from the conversation earlier. He mentioned that those up there were taken from among us. And sometimes a lot of them operate with the philosophy that we too subscribe to. We subscribe to the philosophy of you are there now, make sure it reaches us directly. And some of them that do not have self-control, they do not have other value system to work with, simply begins to steal on behalf of our constituency. They steal on behalf of their constituency. Some diligently stole on behalf of their constituency. You could see it in the things they did, how they shared rice, how they shared corn, how they did this, how they did that. But all of those things, does it solve our problem long term? They don't. They don't solve our problem long term. If somebody comes to you as a political office holder and begin to make private demand, that private demand, he expects you to take and support him from public resources. The moment you begin to do that, you are already undermining your office. The person asking you for money, he will need health care. In his community, is there health facility that provides quality health care? That is what you, from your vantage position, should be doing. How do I solve not just his problem, but other people's problem that he has? And that is when the government begins to think of provide quality primary health care. Why are we even suffering as a country? Most times our suffering is because we are trying to provide for ourselves what the government should provide for all of us. If I dig a borehole today, it will probably cost me 6 to 1 million naira to dig a borehole. My neighbor needs a borehole, he does the same expenses. The next person needs a borehole. In the same street, you might have 10 or 20 boreholes. And funny enough, in some cases, a well-dug borehole, one can serve the whole house on that street. But we are all private. We are all trying to solve our problem. Meanwhile, if government water system was efficient, will I need to budget for borehole? No. Will I need to budget for private school education? No. Will I need to budget for private Medicare? No. Will I need to be so obsessive about providing for myself transportation? No. I will do that as convenience, as an option, because there will be an effective public transportation system that should carry me to anywhere I want to go, at a cost, of course, but probably a cost managed by the state. So for every one of us, where you are is where you are expected to make impact. God will not ask me to come and account for Kaduna South, because I do not manage the resources of Kaduna South. But for my office, for where I am right now, I've managed the whole of Zaria. At the time when I was managing the whole of Zaria, all the way from Saminaka to Kudan to Konandangora, I will account for every falling pole in that axis. And it was my duty to deliver on my job. So wherever it is that God has given you as your own jurisdiction, be a reference point for excellence, a reference point for integrity. Be the one that doesn't blend into corruption but stands out. Be the one that doesn't blend into laziness but efficiency. That is the list that each and every one of us is expected to do. And for that list, we will all account. Okay. Public goods that are supposed to be taken at a cost. You see, there were a lot of changes that could have happened or that should happen, which will help the process. For instance, let me use electricity that you mentioned as a case point. When people consume electricity, some know they have to pay, but like you said, they have decided how much they think is fair enough. But unfortunately, there is a pricing system that determines the price of electricity.
Sorry, sir. To just
Go on, interject.
Now, the thing about that, because being a part of the system, I also was at the place where I had to think about the earning ability of people.
I will get there. Now, there is a pricing system, and all of us, both those here and online, we had and we still have a role to play into feeding the policy making mechanism with our own expectation. We were all here when it was announced that subsidy was gone, and people thought it was just going to be fuel. There are a whole lot of things that government still subsidize, even the electricity, partly. But it started a process of easing the burden of financing electricity bill from the government. Now, people, the way they priced a service like electricity, they price it from the mindset of state welfare service. Because when you look at it, I had a big compound where I disconnected and they came to plead. We had taken the load of the consumption of the premises at different times so that we can use the average to compute the bill, since the meter they were supposed to be using got burnt in less than 7 days after installation, which clearly suggests high load. So when we bill them according to that load, the bill amounted to about 200 and something thousand. So they came begging that we should discount it. I asked how many people lives in that building. They mentioned about 13 families live in the building. And we're billing you 200,000. Divide 200,000 naira by 13 people. Then further divide the value you get by 30 days. And then further divide it by the number of hours you get light on band A, because the place was on band A. You get light for about minimum of 20 hours on band A. When we finish the calculation, the total cost that they were arguing about is 25 naira per hour of electricity, which you can use for anything. I ask, if you buy a candle and put in your house, let's say in the evening you buy a candle of 200 naira and put in your house, how many hours can it burn? Maximum 3 hours, but I expect 2 hours. But maximum is 3 hours. If that candle costs you 200 naira, divided by 3 hours, is about 70 naira. It is not even up to 40% of the value of the electricity we're asking you to pay. So the problem is not even the cost. The problem is your income ability, your ability to pay. So in the country, there are a lot of things that we are not looking at. The water system, I came to Kaduna around 1991. For a very long time, I was living in the compound. I didn't know they used to take light. We don't have jerry can in the house. Then there was no pure water, sachet water. We had a supermarket, we had Ragolis water. Some of them had stayed in that shop for more than a year. Nobody buys it. When you want to drink water, you go and on the tap, fetch water and drink. You want to wash plates, you go to the tap, wash your plate and go. You want to wash clothes, you go. Anything you want to do, you do it straight from the tap. You want to cook, you carry your pot to the tap, you fetch water, you go and cook. Then suddenly, water board had maintenance service and they shut down water for a day. That was when we realized that water can be taken. If that system had continued, we will have a situation where we will all have water. But of course, we ought to pay, just like he said. And it is a responsibility of all citizens to ensure that services consumed are paid for. But people also look at fair charges. And that is why meter was invented. Water board began to install meter, from which they will read and give you a bill. But corruption could not allow those meters to go around, just as is happening or has happened in the electricity industry. The goal is to meter as many people as possible, possibly everybody. But the process has been stalled by two factors. One, the revenue recovery rate on the meters that had been installed in the past fell below market expectation. You're expecting that if a feeder is metered 100%, when you release electricity on that feeder, at the end of the month, the revenue recovered from the electricity will equal or closely equal what was consumed on the feeder. But what did we discover? We discovered that in most of the feeders that were metered end to end, the losses tripled, doubled, thereby discouraging further investment on the meter. And why did that happen? Because a lot of people were bypassing the meter. Energy theft became rampant and is still rampant today. And yet somehow we still expect that we will have quality, stable electricity. Who pays for it? The investors are expected to pay 100% their market invoice, and then the consumers feel they don't have to pay for everything. So let me bypass the meter. Let me cheat. These cheats that are done by individuals help to affect the whole system, because if the industry does not return value, they cannot demand for more supply. So eventually you have feeders that are supposed to be enjoying 10 hours, needs to get 6 hours, 7 hours, 5 hours, because the industry has to balance. So for every one of us, wherever we find ourselves, responsible citizenship begins with knowing what your responsibility is. I know, Doctor, you will speak on the role of conditioning, because you mentioned that before. Like the moderator said, those who got into political offices should know that they have secured a job. And by securing a job, they know they have to deliver on this job. But what do we do as citizens? We create a lot of excuses for them. We don't expect them to perform. We make excuses that we should not be making. When a road project is commissioned, as they are mounting that signboard, they're supposed to tell us the contractor, the supervising agency, the quality of work expected, and the delivery time. And when that happens, the citizens are supposed to expect and demand that the project once started should be completed timely, and the quality paid for should be delivered. But that's not what is happening. We are happy with whatever we get because we feel that the system is not responding to us. But are we making enough demand on the system? Somehow we are not making enough demand on the system, and that is why politicians can enjoy themselves and feel comfortable even when achieving none of their KPIs.
I think the major issue is an issue of stewardship. And because we do not consider ourselves as stewards of resources, we use resources anyhow. I mean, he gave a case study with power, but that applies to every other thing. If you don't steward time, you will mismanage time. I mean, you will use time carelessly. If you don't steward money, same thing. If you don't steward power, if you don't steward water. So number one, there's an issue of stewardship, of which the solution to that has to be sensitization. For people to know that what you're doing on what, like he mentioned, if we cannot recoup the money on investment here, it's going to affect power supply in other places. So stewardship reminds us that if I do my job, other people will also, have the best quality of service. There's the issue of stewardship. Number two, there's the issue of entitlement. A lot of Nigerians are entitled. They feel entitled. And there's so much to say about being entitled. And that's why somebody, feels like I can use power and it should be free. Nobody should challenge me. It was on our land that they installed the mast, or they put the meter, or
the power
so
station.
Why should we pay? So they see there's an entitlement mentality. The power station, thank you. Why should we pay? So there's an entitlement mentality which must be desensitized. So stewardship should be sensitized. Entitlement should be desensitized. And last but not the least, responsibility taking. I was somewhere this morning, and the place was it was a shopping complex, and the place was unkempt. And in my heart, I turned and I said to the person next to me, so you mean that nobody in this place can pay for somebody to cobweb or to clean this whole place? You see that on our streets when somebody throws a trash or throws something. I mean, even in our offices, somebody throws a leather, nobody picks it up. They say we leave it for the cleaner to come and pick it. For you to just pick it and trash it. So responsibility taking is not there. And I think it's something that we should also emphasize in this day and time. We must take responsibility for public infrastructure. There are people that say, well, it's national key, it's for the public. If we spoil it, they will come and repair it. Let me give you an instance recently. If you're traveling to Abuja, there used to be, it's a dual carriage, a dual road. So recently I saw that some boys were vandalizing. There was this concrete, divider that had these iron rods inside. Yeah, well, something like that. And so they kept on vandalizing just to remove the iron rods. And people are passing that road every day, seeing these young boys do this. Nobody stops to tell them this is wrong. Of course, they're going to vandalize and remove those iron rods, go and sell, and then they will give a contractor the contract. We are vandalizing public property. But people don't care, as long as, somebody's going to get money off it. The general principle I'm trying to make is this, that we must also learn to take responsibility for public infrastructure.
Public assets.
Rather than say public assets too. And not say, oh, well, the government is government money. Government will fix it. Holding people accountable. That's the last one. Holding people accountable. So 4 things I want to mention. 1, the issue of, sensitizing people as regarding this is about entitlement, sensitizing people about stewardship, the issue of taking responsibility, and then holding people accountable. Right, let me start by my epilogue and saying thank you for having us. It's been a very robust and rich conversation, and just reminding us to take responsibility. I think I would like to leave again with the words that I mentioned about from Luther and Calvin, right? That we must live our lives as living for God, living before people. That means everything that we do, whatever you are, whoever you are, you must consider that this is your pulpit, this is your ministry, this is your service to God. And in serving God, that's how you service humanity. So if you're watching, I will encourage you that whatever you're doing, I want you to know that that is not just first of all to people, that you're serving first of all to God, a God before whom you will give account, and then secondly, by extension to people. Thank you.
I want to say to anyone out there who might come across this podcast or this broadcast, Nigeria has a future. What that future will look like or become will ultimately be a function of what we feed that future in. Whatever we feed into it. Do not give up on your expectation for a better country. You deserve it. We all deserve it. And on this, work for it. Wherever you find yourself, put in your best. If you have an assignment to deliver, deliver to the best of your ability. And for anyone who is in politics or close to those in politics, let them know that building this country is something that all of us must do. And it is in our best interest. Nations are becoming more conscious. Borders are closing up. Where do we want to go if we don't build our own country? Where do we want to go? Countries are tightening up their immigration policies, restricting migrant labor from one country to the other. Our hope lies in making our country a better place. And we can all do that by electing the right people, registering and becoming part of a political process or civil society group that demands performance, accountability, and a better country. Nobody should take away that expectation. Nobody should push us to a point where we no longer have hope. We always have hope, and that hope is what will help in securing the future of leadership and citizenship responsibility for us and for everyone out there. Thank you.